This is Charles Wiley, and you're listening to the Nothing Shocking podcast.
Want to know what's going on in the world of music? Then tune in to the Nothing Shocking podcast, a non-genre based, all ages friendly rock and roll program. Join us weekly for interviews with all your favorite rock stars from the mainstream to the underground. You can find us at nothingshocking.libsyn.com or anywhere you download podcasts.
We're putting the band back together.
The numbers all go to 11.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Led Zeppelin. What about Sabbath? AC/DC. Motorhead.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
I get up off the ground and raise my head. Days like this, think I should be dead. One for Satan, two for me. Let's cheat the devil, it's fun, don't you agree?
Welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'm your co-host, Jeff Untied, and with me in Dog Bowl Studio is
Coach Nez.
You can find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Libsyn or any podcatchers. Like our Facebook page or follow us on X at No Shock Pod.
You can also find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Rock Rage Radio every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Central Time. Our sponsor is Ragged Records, located in downtown Rock Island, Illinois, and downtown Davenport, Iowa. We'd like to thank the Hong Kong Sleepover for allowing us to use their music for our intro and bumper ending. Tonight's guest is
Charles Wiley, formerly of Black Flag.
Yeah, promoting his newest EP, Cornman Chapter 3.
Yeah, I got some big hitters on there. Derick Sherinian, Greg Mathieson.
Greg Ginn of Black Flag.
He also does recordings and works with other bands. A couple of highlights to check out, Ryatt and Darkhorse Rising.
Let's get to that interview.
All right.
Good night. Charles, welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'd like to introduce you, my co-host, Jeff Untied.
Charles, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you guys so much. Honored to be here. Really appreciate it.
Yo, man, so excited to have you. So let's get right into this right now. You recently released your latest project, Cornman Chapter 3, Operation Freedom Corn. Can you give our listeners an insight to this new musical endeavor?
Yes, I sure can. This is the third and I will say final chapter of this trilogy. Basically, a long story, not super long. Back in 2015, 2016, I got really fascinated in the food industry. I was reading a lot of books about it, and I'm one of those people that once I get interested about something, I just kind of go down a rabbit hole, and I can't get out. And there are a couple great books. One, The Omnivore's Dilemma by Michael Pollan, and another book, Foodopoly by Winona Hodder, I think her name was. And those really kind of changed my viewpoint on food. And one of the things that kept popping up was corn was just like in everything we were eating, like all the time. And I was just like, that's so weird. That's so crazy. And like, I'll say this, like, if you want a tip for losing weight, like read about the food industry, because you won't be hungry. Like after you see how some or hear how some of the stuff is done. And about that same time, I just started working on some of my own music because I've been playing with a lot of other people, and I just kind of had that itch to do something on my own. And I really like weird, proggy, zany stuff, instrumental usually, and that's what I was writing. And the idea of Cornman came to be, and I'm super lucky because I have great friends and family that are really artistically creative. So I asked a buddy of mine, Andy Westoff, I go, hey, can you draw my head on a stalk of corn? And he's like, what? And I was like, yeah, this is the idea. So I released just a single, Cornman, back in 2016, and then an EP a little later that year. And then Cornman Chapter 2 came out in 2018, I believe. And then the final chapter came out just a few months ago. And the cool thing is it's all instrumental prog music, but my wife is a writer, and her and I co-wrote a children's book to go along with each chapter. So not only do you have the music, but the kids' book is kind of like this action adventure story following the main character doesn't have a name, but I will say he looks a lot like me, which is kind of strange. But, I go on this adventure, and chapter 3, the whole story kind of comes to an end. And it was a lot of fun. And I really feel each chapter is a little different. But with Cornman Chapter 3, Operation Freedom Corn, I feel like we did a really nice job of tying the whole thing together. And I'm really proud of the music that I was able to do, but also just super grateful to have so many great musicians play on it, because to me, like, that's really what makes the albums and the songs so much fun, is I get to work with my friends and peers, and sometimes like musicians I've looked up to forever, and the fact that they're like, yeah, I'll play on your music. And I'm like, really? Like, okay, like, awesome, so, and I released, Settle the Score was the first single, and then Cornpocalypse was the second single, and Cornpocalypse features Derick Sherinian on keyboards, who played with Dream Theater and Black Country Communion and a bunch of other guys, other bands, and then I just, like I said, released the final EP about 2 months ago. So that's the whole arc in a nutshell there.
Oh, we're so excited. Yeah, I was going to say, is there a story behind getting those guys to play with you? Obviously I know Greg is with you in Black Flag, but was it hard to get some of those guys to play with you, or like you said, it was maybe pretty easy?
Well, it's weird. That's kind of a twofold answer. COVID, as bad as COVID was for like everything, some of the silver linings were a lot of musicians were just at home and they didn't have anything to do. So I actually think Derick Sherinian posted on Instagram, like, hey, I'm available for recording sessions, if anyone needs anything. And I was like, really? So like I DM'd him on Instagram. It was crazy how fast he responded. I was just like, I remember talking to my wife. I was like, I just emailed Derick Sherinian, and then I was like, oh, he just emailed me back and he wants to hear the song. And I'm like, holy smokes. And we went back and forth, and then 2 days later, he's like, here you go. And I was like, what? And I'm a big Dream Theater fan, and the tones he had on the solo were very, reminded me a lot of the Falling to Infinity record. And I was just like a kid in a candy store. I was just like, and he's like, do you want any revisions? I was like, no, that was great. Thank you. But getting Greg Mathieson, who's a Hammond B3 player, I've loved that guy forever. I don't know if you guys have heard of the jazz club, the Baked Potato in LA.
Yes.
Well, he's had a band there since the 80s. And in the 80s, Jeff Porcaro was on drums, Steve Lukather on guitar. And then in the early 2000s, it was Michael Landau on guitar and Vinny Colaiuta on drums, who both those drummers, Vinny and Jeff, are just, idols. And I'm just like, wow. But I had this weird idea. I forget where I read about it, but a drummer said in an interview that he wanted to get a gig playing with a keyboard player. And he decided to take drum lessons with a keyboard player, not a drummer, because he figured if I can take lessons with a keyboard player, jam with a keyboard player, then I'll be better situated to actually work with a keyboard player. And I was like, that's cool. And I always wanted to play with Greg Mathieson. I had no idea how. I was like, well, this guy has the best of the best of the best playing with him. What am I going to do? So I thought, well, I'll try that. I'm just going to see. And I go, well, I'll see if Greg Mathieson has anything on his website, contact info. And I went on his website. This was 2018. And it said lessons. And I was like, lessons? And it said drummer / Hammond B3 lessons. And I was like, what? And basically, I called him up and I played drums. He played organ, and we talked about groove. We talked about feel. We talked about all the intricacies of creating that stuff. And the first phone call I had with him, it was an hour just chatting. He's telling me all these stories. And I got off the phone. I came out of my room, went into the living room, and I just sat on the floor. And my wife's like, are you okay? I go, I don't think I can ever play drums again. And she's like, the conversation was that good. I go, it changed everything. So I was literally kind of like paralyzed for like 30 minutes after, like, what do I do now? But through that, I started taking lessons with him, and I think there were hour lessons, but super gracious with his time. And he had this whole idea to start a groove camp with drummers and organ players. COVID kind of killed a little bit of that, but also from what he told me, that there wasn't a whole lot of interest from other drummers. And that really surprised me, because I was like, what the heck? Like, this guy's like a legend. Like, okay. So, I took 5, 6, 7 lessons with him. Really, really informative. And that actually, I think, dovetailed into me working with Black Flag later. And we can get into how all that happened later. But during COVID too, I was just like, hey, Greg, I have a few songs, you can tell me to, fly a kite if you want, but are you interested in playing on these? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, how much do you charge? And he's like, man, everyone's hurting. Like, whatever you can. And I was just like, what? And I used the word already, but super gracious, super kind. And I feel his playing, everyone's playing really contributed a lot. But what the thing that I really liked about the songs he played on is him and I cut those live in the studio together. So I was playing drums, he was playing B3, and to me, I felt like, well, that's my like 1980s or 2000s moment of like being live in the studio with like a hero playing a record, And I was like, I don't know if I'll ever get to do that again at something like this. So I was really excited, practiced a lot, was really nervous, but in the end, it all came out pretty good, I think.
Oh, so cool. So, Cornpocalypse is my favorite track on the new EP.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm a big fan of Derick Sherinian myself, along with Jeff here. Can you talk a little bit more about this track and the writings and the recording of it? And then, I guess you've touched upon, communication with Derick a little bit, but can you go a little bit more in depth about the whole track itself?
Absolutely. Well, what I wanted to do with Cornman Chapter 3 was I kind of wanted to tip my hat to the first 2 EPs, because the whole story was kind of coming to a close. So I wanted to use keyboard sounds that I used on Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. So Settle the Score and Race Against Time are kind of like the Cornman Chapter 1 synth sounds a bit, and Cornpocalypse and Welcome Home is kind of Cornman Chapter 2. And then the last track was just kind of too much coffee on a given Sunday, and that just came out. that was just what it was. And I was like, okay. But the Cornpocalypse was a lot of fun because I just had that opening riff, and I'll be honest, like, I'm not a trained keyboard player, so I just kind of noodle around. I fall in love with sounds, and I love that, like, it's an electric piano patch in the Roland Phantom keyboard that I have, and I just love that patch, and I was just goofing with it, and I was just like, oh, that sounds really cool. I like that, and I took that and just kind of built on that, and the melodies for all these songs come later. So I write kind of the structure, the rhythm tracks of it, and I guess you could say I'm kind of old school or maybe just not smart, either one, but I play all that stuff like I play it all. Like, I don't copy and paste the keyboard part or do it MIDI. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but like with me, I want, even though it's just me doing a lot of it, I hope it comes across like this sounds like a band or something, and that's what I really want. I really want it to sound like a band. So it's not super, gridded up on the grid and all that stuff. It's like, I do it to a click, obviously, because that just makes life easier. But so with Cornpocalypse, that whole part came about, and the melody was, I just kind of noodled around until I find a melody that I like. And the one thing I've tried to do with all the Cornman music, because I wanted to separate it from instrumental guitar music, I love that stuff, but when a guitar is the melody of a song, it instantly, at least in my ear, makes you think, rightfully so, you're a guitar player. Like, oh, you're one of those. And like, I didn't want that to be the lead instrument in all of my stuff. That's why I use horns or strings or things of that nature. But the guitar player, Nicholas Fassard, who played on it, a great guitar player, I played with him a lot. he started doubling the melody of it on guitar, and I was like, well, that really kind of works. That was really kind of cool. And his solo on the outro, like, to me, that was kind of like, I don't know, like my tip of the hat to like Clapton's Layla, that piano part at the end. And I just kind of told him, like, do your thing, man. And he did, and it came out great. But getting back to working with Derick on that, he actually sent me like a workup of like the A section, the B section, and the C section of the song. And the parts he had were really neat. They were kind of more fantasy sounds a bit, kind of and in my head I was like, I wasn't hearing that. But also I wanted to be like budget wise, like what he charged I thought was very fair for what he did, but to have someone of his caliber to play a whole treatment on a song, which that would have been a lot of his time, and 6 or 7 different keyboard parts, like that was out of my budget. And I was just like, I can't, could you just do a solo? And he was like, yeah. And we didn't even talk about like sounds or anything for the solo. He just did it and sent it back. And as I mentioned earlier, when I heard it, I was like, oh, it's like falling to infinity. This is amazing. Okay, cool. This is great. Yeah. So I hope that answered the question. Yeah.
Oh, that was fantastic. Yeah.
Hey, I wanted to ask a little bit more about the concept part of it, the kids' books and stuff. That's a really cool concept, and I think it kind of you said this might be the final one for the Corn Man project, but I could see maybe coming up with a different theme or a different kids' book and maybe trying this again. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree. I don't want to say the door is closed. It's hard because I have spent so much time creating this character, this concept, this thing. I think, I know I will use Corn Man again going further. And actually my goal is to start playing this music out live, in some capacity. I think I'll probably start just doing that solo drums with tracks behind me and video stuff behind it. I think is going to be the first step to kind of doing that. And I've done a little bit of that on some drum clinics I've done. I'll play along to a couple of the songs, and that's always fun. But to your point, I do think there'll be more in the Corn Man world. I think, this arc of it, this story, the human who is me, or who looks a lot like me, and the dog Bonzo and the cat Beaker, their arc has kind of like that story is kind of closed, but that the door is definitely open to what they're doing now or before or since then. That for sure could be something.
Oh, that's so cool. When it comes to your songwriting methods, that is, for Corn Man, what's your mindset when it comes to a creative level, creating these concept of sorts? Because let's face it, songwriting is one thing, but conceptual songwriting is another thing. Can you kind of give our listeners an insight to how you go into that mode of conceptual songwriting?
Sure. First and foremost, I love and driven kind of by sounds, as silly as that sounds, and my primary instrument being drums. But like when I get behind the keyboard, like I'll just kind of run through sound patches that, some I've liked, but like I mentioned earlier, I have a Roland Phantom keyboard that I've had for 15 years. And like, there's still things I find in there like, oh, I didn't know it could do that. And also, maybe it's how I'm using it or I've learned something new. So it's always sound driven first. And with the concept, because I've been writing music for TV for about 10 years now, I kind of look at things like a story on a screen in my head as I'm doing it. And that really helps me, because if someone said, hey, write me a song, it could be anything you want. I'd be like, oh gosh, like where do you start? But when I had the concept Corn Man, I wanted to tell the story. The music was easier to write because the sounds I was gravitating towards were kind of fitting what I was visualizing in my head, and those two kind of were easier to marry. I think if you have a concept and you're just kind of floating around looking for different sounds, once you like find a sound or two that kind of like for me, like a couple of those keyboard patches kind of became voices of some of the characters or voices of a chapter. And then it's like, okay, now I have a launching pad and now I can go from there. And then after that, it's just way too much coffee and the brain just goes and like, like my wife always teases, she's like, you have so many ideas. And I'm like, they're all great. She goes, I said you had so many ideas. I was like, okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. I give you that, but it's like, I don't have trouble coming up with ideas. Like, it's like, no, cool. Like, finishing them can be work sometimes, but yeah, that's kind of, my process.
Oh, very good. Well, I think it's time where we're going to take a break and we're going to listen to a Corn Man track. Can you tell us what we're going to listen to?
Yes, we're going to listen to the first song off of Corn Man Chapter 3, Operation Freedom Corn. This is Settle the Score, and this has Greg Mathieson on B3. And like I mentioned earlier, him and I cut this in the studio live. The solos he's playing, he did right in front of me, and I hope you can see the big grin on my face as you're listening to it, this track. So yeah, to Settle the Score.
Yeah, let's get to it. right, we're back. What a killer track, man.
Yeah.
That was fantastic.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the video for Settle Score. One of my favorite parts in there, things that came out of the COVID era, the 4-part or 5-part, how many people are in the band, videos where you kind of go back and forth, and you're playing drums and you're also playing keyboards, and then I think my favorite part of that video is when it cuts to the cat sitting at the keyboard. He's just sitting there.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. Well, that was my cat, Getty, who is named after Getty Leo Rush, and Wayne Shorter, who was, the great saxophone player. So I just figured, well, people like cats, so that should, if you get tired of looking at me, then, hopefully the cats will, keep you looking longer. So.
Very cool. Well, let's flip the page here. You also write music for TV and film. Give us an insight to Charles Wiley, the TV and film work, to that of the artist and solo work, and that of also the band member.
Okay, well, how much time do we have? No, just kidding. I'll back up to about, almost 20 years ago now. My brother and I had a prog rock band that we were doing, and it kind of reached its breaking point, and I was like, nope, I got to break up the band. This is it. So I broke up the band. And I will just say as a side note, if you want to make holidays even more stressful, break up a band with a family member like 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. That makes things challenging. But, after that, I thought, well, I just want to be, I loved the idea of being a studio musician. As I alluded to before, my favorite drummers like Vinny Colaiuta and Jeff Porcaro, like that was how they made their mark. And that world faded away and has faded away as I was making my push into music as a career, you could say. But I always had this idea that I want to write music for TV and film. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I thought it would be something I would do later in my life after I got done touring and blah, 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 blah. But when I broke up the band with my brother, I had some downtime to figure out, like, I got to get in some bands. How does this thing work? So I just started writing some music. I'd always written music, but kind of got a little more serious writing just instrumental music with the idea of, like, I can use this for TV and film. And there's an agency called Taxi.com. And what they do, for a yearly fee, you get listings and they run the gamut. They can be an A&R person looking for the next Taylor Swift thing, or a music supervisor looking for dramatic music for a reality show. And, they send out these briefs. And the coolest part is if you become a member, they do a 4-day conference in LA, and that's free after you pay your membership. And at this conference, there's just panels all day of like A&R people, tips from them, production managers looking for music supervisors, and all this stuff. So I went with my demo CD of 6 songs, and I was just kind of overwhelmed, actually, because a lot of the music I was hearing, I was like, I don't think my stuff is anywhere near this stuff. And like, I don't know, I was kind of lacking the confidence to go up to these people after a panel and be like, here's my demo CD. Can you help me? But the last panel of one of the days, one of the gentlemen up there he ran a production library. And are you guys familiar with that? If you're basically they provide music for TV shows, like that sort of thing. And he at that point was providing half the music for Oprah's show at the time. And I went up to him after the panel. I was like, thank you, sir. Can I write? He just, give me your CD. I was like, okay, great, thanks. So he took my CD, and the conference was in November. August rolls around the following year, and he was the only one I gave a CD to. That's the whole thing. So August rolls around. What is that? 10 months later, and I get an email from this guy and said, hey, I checked out your demo CD. I liked it. I'm starting my own production library. I'd like you to write for it. How many cues or pieces of music can you write in 6 weeks? Mind you, I had I mean, the 6 I wrote, I think, took me 12 years. I was like, I don't know. I don't. So I responded, and I was being like, well, I'm going to show him how prolific I am. I go, I can write 4 or 5 in 6 weeks. He goes, that's great. You need to write 20 as a minimum to be a part of this. And I was like, 20? I was like, okay. Oh, okay. And at that point, I was working a full-time job at a mailroom. And I knew I wasn't going to be there forever. I knew music was going to be what I was going to do, but I wasn't prepared at that point to just quit. But I had to, because I was like, well, this is a great opportunity. I'm going to, jump full bore into this. And my wife has been super supportive from the very beginning. And I said, well, I'll just try to get a part-time job and try to make it up as I go. So I dove headlong into it. I made a lot of mistakes, still make a lot of mistakes when I'm writing stuff for certain things. But about a month into this process, Oprah announced it was going to be her last season on the air. And when she did that, she wanted all new music for that last season. So the guy who was starting his own production library reached out to me and a bunch of other writers and said, well, I'm going to pull you off of my project and ask, do you want to write for Oprah's last season? And I was like, sure, like that would be awesome. So I wrote 5 or 6 pieces for that. And the first placement I ever had was on her show during her last season. So that's kind of how all that came to be.
That's awesome. It is. I saw on their Dateline and
yes,
Dr. Oz. That's pretty impressive.
Well, thank you. I think at this point I have, over probably 250, 300 placements. It's hard because once they go into these libraries, they get used and you don't really know until after the fact. But I really like that because to me, it's kind of like a retirement account in a way. It's like there's pieces of music I've written 12 years ago that I still get paid for. So it's really kind of nice to just kind of see that stuff come in. The hard part is I tend to write darker, depressing music for those shows. And a quick story on that Oprah placement, like I had such mixed feelings because the episode it got played on, I think the title of the episode was the 12-year-old boy who was locked in a shed for 6 weeks or something. Like his parents were horrible. Like it was just this horrible thing. And I remember watching it and like I heard my piece of music behind this montage of like the fence and like barbed wire, and I was like, oh my God. And it's so weird because on one end you're like, this is really like, I should celebrate this. But then on the other end, you're like, this is horrible. So that's a lot of my placements are in shows like that are kind of darker. And I think Netflix has a show called I'm a Killer, I think. And I just found out I had something placed in that a few months ago. And I was like, well, I probably shouldn't be sharing that with the family. That's probably a little too heavy to watch during dinner. It's like, yeah, we'll skip that one. So,
great movie, though. Fantastic movie.
Okay, I've not seen. Okay, that's good to know. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about being the songwriter and doing the stuff for TV and movies where you probably don't get the accolades or the credit like you would in a band that makes it to the mainstream. But can you talk a little bit about that pride of how does it work for you of that being that anonymous person when having the music on a show?
That's a really good question. I like it, and I think writing for TV, and I don't think I really put this together until you kind of just did there. I think that's really helped me playing in bands because it helps me realize that I'm not the center of attention. Like I'm there to play drums. I'm there to make the music the best I can. I'm there to, have fun, of course, but like, it's not me. Like Black Flag was a great example. Like, people go to see Black Flag. Like the drummer is inconsequential. I mean, look at their Wikipedia page. I was like drummer number 10. It's like, you can't have a loyalty to, and it's like, I didn't like ever want it to be like this is my Black Flag. Like, no, like this is Greg's band. Like this is his baby. Like I'm honored to be a part of it. It was great to play in it, but being in the TV writing world, it really helped because you're used to not being seen. You're used to being heard. And that was an old adage that one of the composers said I met. They're like, heard by millions, seen by none. I was like, oh yeah, I like that. So I think it's really helped. And I also think that's why I have the Corn Man stuff. Like that's where I can put all that energy of being like, hey, this is me. This is my face. This is my thing. and not worry so much about the attention with other bands and things like that.
Fair enough. Well, since you alluded to Black Flag, it was last July. I went to see Black Flag, and Charles Wiley was back behind the drum kit, killing it. It was a thrilling show. That was my first time seeing Black Flag all these years. I missed them.
Oh wow!
They played here back in the day when Henry Rollins was fronting the band or whatever. But
okay,
it'd been a long time since it's been back in our area. So you guys spent a lot of time on the road back in 2024. I guess what it was, 2 months or 2.5 months. I know you went over to Europe too, correct?
Yes. Yeah, I don't want to cut off your question though, but yes, we did spend a lot of time on tour. Yes, okay. Yes, absolutely.
Talk a little bit more about the origins of getting into Black Flag for that moment of time for yourself. Just tell us about the journey.
Well, I started working with those guys in August of 2022, and a bass player I had worked with before, played with in a couple different bands. He had started working with them before me, and was just kind of like, "Oh man, it's going great," and da 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 da. And I knew of Black Flag. I knew a few of the songs. I knew like TV Party, Six Pack, things like that. I knew more of Greg's solo stuff, like his jam band stuff, because like my brother plays guitar, and I love guitar players. I love that sort of music. So I was more in that world than Black Flag. But the bass player reached out and said, "Hey, they're having their current drummer has a scheduling conflict. Do you want to audition?" And I was like, well, yeah, sure. Like, why not? So I learned 7 songs, and we played them, and some of that Black Flag stuff. So you can play 7 songs in 12 minutes, and then what do you do for the extra hour and 45 minutes? But we just jammed, and we jammed a lot, and that's where the idea in my head, because in the very beginning I was like, man, I wouldn't call myself a punk rock drummer by any stretch of the imagination. I'm a rock drummer. Like, my favorite drummers are the guys I alluded to before, and like Alex Van Halen and, those sort of drummers. And like, I don't really understand a lot of like Bill Stevenson is great. What he does is fantastic, but I don't play like that. But after jamming with Greg and hearing his influences and what he wanted for the music, I was like, maybe. Okay. But still, I was just like, after the 2 hours, I had another rehearsal to go to. So I was like, thank you so much. It was an honor. He's like, well, I have one more other person I want to audition next week, but I'll get back in touch with you. And I was like, okay. And I was like, well, that was cool. Like, I expect to hear next week. We went with the other person, and that was that. And a week later, he texted and said, I'd like to talk to you about working with us. And how soon can you be in Texas to start rehearsals? And that was August. The tour kicked off in October, I think. So I went out to Texas in September, and we spent about 3.5, 4 weeks rehearsing. We did the first tour with Total Chaos, TSOL, and the Dickies. And then after that, we did Europe with Total Chaos, and then we came back to the U.S. in 2023. Yeah, sounds right. And then it was the My War record, and we played the My War record for the first set, and then just kind of a greatest hits for the second set, and that went on for about a year. And with all said and done, I think I played close to 220 shows with them over a 3-year period or something like that. I mean, it was amazing. I mean, we toured the U.S. like 5 or 6 times, Europe, Japan, Australia, Canada, Hawaii. I know that's not a country, but still it sounds better. You just say Hawaii. So it was great. But but to your point earlier, when we were talking about where you saw us play, I don't mean to sound like one of the, but I can barely remember that, because it's such a blur in the best possible way, because it's just like and we would do runs where we're on the road for 35 days, but we're playing 32 shows. Right. So you do 8 or 9 shows in a row, and then on your day off, Mike, who did all the driving, is we have an 11-hour drive to the next place. So you're in the van, and then you get there, and then you do another 4 in a row, and then another 5 in a row, and it's just go, 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 go. But the best part of that is the musical chops, the muscle memory. That stuff just gets elevated to a whole nother level. Like, I'm such a different drummer now than I was before I started playing with those guys, and it was such a great experience. And I was really grateful for it.
It was just a memorable show, one that will be etched in my mind. Like, I will never forget it because it was so fantastic. You guys were so good that night. You were super tight. But when it comes to drumming for a band like you're welcome, for for a band like Black Flag, did you have any reservations or I guess maybe a little bit intimidations as far as playing some of those Black Flag classics?
Yeah, of course. Especially before I said yes. I think the worst thing you can do is, go on the internet when you have to make a decision, because, you start reading all this stuff and you're just like, I don't know, like da-da-da-da, and all the past dramas they've had. And I was just like, well, shoot, like every band has drama, like, duh, that's part of it, like whatever. And all those drum parts are pretty iconic too. Like Six Pack, TV Party, Gimme Gimme Gimme, Nervous Breakdown. I mean, that's still such a kick, or was, because I stopped touring with them in this past January. But every time Greg started Nervous Breakdown, the crowd would go bananas. And it's just like, that's so cool to be on stage, behind the guy who wrote the tune that's playing the lick that they're losing their stuff over. Like, that's rad, So I definitely had pause, but the thing that really helped was Greg never really told me what to play. Like, when I started learning the music, like, I started watching a bunch of YouTube videos of the last iteration of the band and then just worked my way back to the recording. And I basically learned 3 or 4 different versions of some of those songs because I wasn't exactly sure what to play or how to, what it was. But getting into rehearsals, ironing some of that stuff out. And I'm pretty sure if Greg would have ever said the words, punk rock drumming to me, that might have scared me off in the beginning, because I've been like, that's not what I do. But he never said that. Like, he just said, I want this music to groove at, 200 beats per minute. And I was like, oh. And that alludes back to what I learned with the lessons with Greg Mathieson, the Hammond B3 player, because we talked a lot about groove and like playing behind the beat. And I was like, oh man, like, can I play behind the beat that fast and da 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 da? And it was a real challenge. Every show was a challenge, and I don't say that to be, cutesy or whatever. It's like, that music was intense. It was hyper focused to do a good job, and I tried my best every night. And it was weird because some of the songs like Gimme Gimme Gimme, Greg wanted the drum part different than the record, and I'd have people come up to me after the show and be like, you didn't play that right. And I'd be like, well, you're not wrong, but the guy who wrote it and wanted to hear it a certain way wants it this way. So, it's like, yeah, I'm not going to argue with you, but yeah, it's like, but yeah, I think I liked all the drummers they had. Bill was probably one of my favorites just because it's so different than how I would hear things, the way he came up with things. And I mean, obviously what he's done with his, bands afterwards is kind of, it's legendary on his own, but it was a lot of fun to learn that stuff, and challenging.
Oh, so fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I was checking out your website, and on there, I know you said you're available for recording shows and tours.
Yes.
Checking out the discography, it was pretty cool. I remember going down through there and just like the band Ryatt. Did I pronounce that right? RYA.
You did. Yes,
so
sir.
You guys got at least 3 EPs out there and some more singles and stuff. Can you talk a little bit about that band?
Yes, of course. And thank you for bringing them up, because we are just finishing up another EP now. It's in the mastering stages. Rob, the chief songwriter of that band, I've been in that band since 2015, I think, 2016, something like that. Rob and I met working with this artist named Sonia Harley, who got she was working with Lemmy and Motorhead a lot, and she got to play on the motorboat cruise. Unfortunately, the last one they did, because Lemmy passed away after that, so she needed a band for that, and that's where I met Rob of Ryatt, and we did the motorboat cruise. It was rad. We kind of went on before Suicidal Tendencies, and Anthrax was on there, and it was a whole lot of fun. But through that experience, Rob and I started writing some music together, and that turned into the first Ryatt EP and then the second one. And we did a few tours that we booked ourselves, and we went out with another band, Phantasmo, that I played drums in both bands because I could, and I was like, well, it'd be easier for things just to have the same drummer for both things. And we did quite a bit. And this next EP is been over 3 years in the making, I think, but that's because of a lot of different things. And with me being gone with Black Flag too, that I think slowed some things down. But I'm really excited for the new Ryatt EP that is coming out. It's going to be, I don't want to say different. I think all the EPs are a little different, but I don't want to spoil anything for anybody. But I think we're all really proud of what that record's going to sound like. So
awesome,
so cool. Well, you've been in the music business for a long time. Can you talk about the challenges of being a working musician in the now, to opposed to 25 years ago, however long it's been that you've been doing this?
Yeah, I think. Well, it's interesting because the way I thought I would be making my living as a working musician is different than how it shook out. And that's because the music industry has changed so much. When I got the bug to kind of do this, and I was like, no, this is it. Like, you could make a living as a studio musician. And I knew some drummers that back in the 90s and 80s, they made a good living playing on demos for people that, those demos never saw the light of day. Those were the things that, they made the records from. And all of that sort of dried up with the advent of, working from home and loops and all that stuff. But the flip side of that coin is I really can't complain one bit, because the same technology that dried up one aspect of it made it possible for me to write music for TV in my bedroom. Like, I couldn't have done that, 25 years ago. I would have needed a whole big space and hire all these people and da-da-da-da-da. So the industry is changing a lot. I think it's always changed. I think the biggest difference now is people aren't buying music, physical product, the way they were in the late or early 2000s and 90s and all that stuff, and before with vinyl and all that. So when you no longer have a physical product to buy, it makes it hard for bands and musicians to make money from that effort of the time and cost they put into making the music. So, like, I have a Spotify account. I stream music all the time. And, I just think I'm not going to bash that the streaming thing is just where music is, but there's so much music out there all the time that, you can't go into any restaurant, cafe, gas station without music playing now. Like, it wasn't that way 10 years ago, let alone 20 years ago. So it's just everywhere. But since the physical product is no longer something to be purchased, they have to make that money on the road. And that just kind of strains the whole financial institution of what it takes to go make a living as a musician. But the one thing I would stress is I think it's still possible to do. I feel like I'm of the age where I still have one foot in that analog world and one foot in the digital world. And the one bit of advice I would give anyone coming up would be, try to work on songwriting. Like, try to do something where you're owning something that you're creating, because that's been the biggest help for me, having the TV music, having my own music, because when you're not getting any phone calls or you're not getting any texts from people needing you to play in their band, you can pivot to, well, I'm going to work on this TV music, or I'm going to work on my own music and try to find a home for that. And not only is that good just for the soul and for your creativity, but it also, you become less dependent on other people for, your living, which I think is important.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well, we're running out of our allotted time for the evening. Is there anything that we left off tonight that you would like to plug or promote?
No, I think we touched on, a lot of the highlights of my career. We left out all the lowlights, which would be too many to list. So, but I just want to thank you both for, inviting me on here. I truly honored to be here. Thank you guys so much. And thank you to your listeners for supporting and listening to the podcast.
Absolutely. Well, let's go to the last track that we're going to play for the evening. What we're going to listen to tonight, Charles?
Well, I was initially thinking Race Against Time, but since you guys said Cornpocalypse was one of your favorites, can we just flip the script and let's go out with Cornpocalypse featuring Derick Sherinian on keys?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
right, we're back. That's my favorite track on the album, man. Love it.
Thank you.
Well, very good. Well, this is how things are going to work out. Jeff here, he's the editing wizard over here, and he's going to clean up all of my boogers. You guys sounded pretty good tonight, like normal, but he's going to get everything all cleaned up, and then when it's all cleaned up, we'll send it to you, the link to you, and please share it wherever you possibly can. We'd appreciate it.
Absolutely. Again, I just wanted to thank you guys so much. I had a lot of fun, and I hope my answers weren't too long or too boring or anything like that. So
no, man, you were fantastic.
No, you were a lot of fun.
So here's a far-fetched request, and just tell me, like, no, that's not possible. I cannot do that. But I'm a teacher. I'm a public school teacher. And by day, I have a student, a third-grade student, who is a killer drummer. Can you believe that already? He's like just killing.
Yes.
Can I send? can I send you his video so you can watch it?
Of course.
For the talent show. He did it for the talent show. Just tell me what you think.
Yes.
I just thought he was badass, little kid. He's just doing a hell of a job.
Absolutely. Oh yes. Yeah. No. I thought you were gonna ask. Can I fly out to get into Verver? I don't know. I don't know where you're going with. No, that's easy. Yeah. You want me to watch? Of course. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I'd be absolutely sure. Send it my way. Absolutely.
So here's the reason why is because he's just enamored with certain bands right now. He's just a young kid. He's like going to be 4th grade, but it's either Slipknot or Korn or whatever. I said, hey, I said to him, I said, Carson, to evolve to where you want to be, and you got to incorporate other things to inspire you. You just can't keep playing the same stuff over and over again. And he's just a kid right now. He doesn't understand that, and his parents are trying to invigorate him on that concept as well. But he's just a kid right now, and the only thing that really matters is the new metal stuff and whatever. But I thought, man, maybe a guy like Charles would like to listen to this little kid play and tell me what you think, because I'd like to pass it along to his parents, to what your thoughts on him. You know what I mean?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. I'd definitely be happy to hear what he has to do. And the only thing I'll add is I think it's important, obviously, for kids to kind of branch out and do that stuff. But, I think if he's into the new metal stuff, like, it's weird because I'm trying to think back to when I was, getting started and stuff. And, you do go down in these kind of year chunks where you're like, well, I mean, I think from age 17 to 23, if the song wasn't 12 minutes long, I wasn't interested. I was just like, what is this? So it's like, and you couldn't talk me out of like, no, Al Di Meola, Dream Theater, right? Like that was all I wanted to hear, So I eventually came back to reality a little bit, but I'll be happy to listen to it and pass anything out. Or maybe, I could just say, hey, your drumming reminded me of so-and-so, and maybe send him a link to another drummer that he might want to check out or something. If you think that'd be cool.
That'd be so cool. Because, I've tried to enamor him to stuff like Bad Brains and Cro-Mags and stuff like that. Just stuff, just to try to get him going. And, he's just a 9-year-old kid right now, 10, going on 10, and he can't. I try to explain to him, I was like, hey, these bands wouldn't exist if it wasn't for these bands, type of thing. You know what I mean? So
yes, that's the funny part. Yeah, and I was that weird kid. Like when I would find a drummer, I'd be like, well, who are their influences? And I'd just go down that train of thought and just be like, oh wow, and maybe that'll help him. He'll hear that and be like, oh, okay, cool. But yeah, absolutely, send me anything you want that he's done, and I may not get back super quick because I'll be traveling the next few days out of state for a recording gig, but I'll definitely respond for sure.
Yeah, for sure, man. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you for everything that you've done tonight. We're so honored to have you on the show.
Oh, you're too kind. Thank you. I mean, I sincerely mean it. Like, I'm honored to be on the show, and thank you for reaching out, and thank you for coming to the Black Flag show last year. That means a lot. So
yeah, it was fantastic. So all right, so we're gonna leave you alone for the evening, and like I said, I'll be in touch with you. Jeff should have it all cleaned up and ready to go, man.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you guys so much. Have a great night.
You too. Take care.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
hills instead. Hide in the spotlights. Fight the grip of death. You can have the air you need, but you best not take one breath. Hey. Roll the dice. Take your chances. Everybody knows the game is fixed, there is no prize. Everybody pulls the plug and says their last goodbyes. Move to the sunshine, fight the grip of nights. If they ever take from you, then you plug out both